Besides, joining me for all the chat is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning.
Morning again.
We've been asking people to get in touch. A lot of people getting in touch about Nadeem Zahawi. We're going to be talking more about him. He defected to reform. I'm asking you, basically, you know, it's the most high-profile former Tory Chancellor, former Tory Chairman, defecting to reform. Big coup for Nigel Farage. He was claiming yesterday. But what's your reaction? Is it a good thing for reform or a bad thing? A lot of reform voters saying they're really unhappy about, you know, is reform now a dumping ground for failed Tories? He was forced out. He was sacked. He was actually sacked for basically, you know, lying, not refusing to actually declare the fact that he was under investigation for not paying enough tax by HMRC when he was Chancellor. But a lot of you have been getting in touch saying you think it's a good thing. We need his experience in government, need his business, they say, for reform to do well. Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts also on the conversation we were just having with Kelly J. Keane about the UK preparing to ban X over those Grok AI images being used to create sort of, well, images of women in bikinis, but including kids as well. Government says they're going to make that illegal. Elon Musk has said a move to ban the site would be fascist. Meanwhile, Ofcom, we discovered yesterday, launched an official investigation, and Starmer, in a stunning and brave move, hasn't posted on X for a few days, but he is on TikTok, which tells you everything, doesn't it? Tom Slater, I mean, just initial reaction to what Kelly J. Keane had said. She thinks, look, this isn't about protecting women. This is actually an agenda. The government... Last government didn't like X very much either, and this government definitely doesn't, because it's seen as a right-wing social media. They want all social media to be left-wing. All views that aren't, you know, their views are obviously extreme and far right. Do you think there is a secret agenda?
I don't think it's that secret. I think it's pretty obvious where this has come from. We've talked about it earlier on the show. If your concern was sexual violence, then you'd be talking more about the grooming gangs. You would be talking about AI bikini pictures. If your worry is online grooming, then surely you would focus on the platforms like Snapchat, where the lion's share, it seems like, particularly child grooming seems to take place. Ofcom haven't launched an investigation into them. And it's been obvious for some time now that this Labour government, but previous governments as well, have it in for X for precisely the reason that political elites have not particularly liked freedom of speech historically. It's because X is one of the biggest pro-free speech platforms that exists. Generally speaking, people are allowed to say what they want. And
I wish they weren't allowed to just go around calling people, you know, C word and the B word and every other word in between. It'd be quite nice. I mean, I can live with it.
Of course, and there is that, and there is the sort of question about how do you have a free speech platform that also is relatively civil, I suppose. But it's still, it's clear that the thing that they're upset about is not the abuse or the screaming. It's the fact that you now have ordinary people who not simply have the right to say what they want, but also have the means to say it on quite a big scale.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's happened. You think about so many of the scandals that have roiled this government in quite a short space of time. Grooming gangs, would that have exploded again without X? Almost certainly not.
100%.
The illegal migration issue has become central. I think
people
social media in general,
the images,
X in particular,
and also seeing the all the stories being shared from local papers and others about that thing that never happens but keeps on happening, which is someone who's an asylum seeker living in a hostel getting arrested, charged, and or convicted for sexually abusing or raping women and girls. I mean, that thing that never happens. I don't think that would be all over the mainstream, well, some of the mainstream media, certainly not all over the BBC or anything, is it? If it wasn't for it being all over X.
No, I think that's exactly true. And it's also obvious that the government have developed something akin to an obsession with Elon Musk. I mean, it is kind of mutual, and he has Elon Musk taken a slightly crankish turn of late. But they are basically some
of the things Elon Musk has said is outrageous about ousting our government. You know, sod off, sod off, mate. This isn't your country. We'll deal with things.
The balance there, I think, is you do not have to be a fan of this particularly erratic billionaire to recognise if you've got the government who have basically gone around and designated one of the most prominent critics as akin to a national security threat. I mean, there was that report the other week about the Home Office stepping up its monitoring of his tweets for fear of how they might contribute to social disorder and radicalisation.
Nonsense.
This is... Ultimately, the state has the power to censor in a way that even billionaires do not, unless they own a social media platform.
But there was that argument before, I think certainly before lockdown, I think even possibly during lockdown, the argument was that the social media companies were so much more powerful than nations. And, you know, basically Zuckerberg could do whatever the hell he wanted, and, you know, and Twitter could do what the hell they wanted because they were bigger than countries. That a lot of those companies were richer than a lot of countries. That seems to be sort of rolling back. And I've not got a problem with some. I think you're more of a free speech absolutist than I've not really got a problem with there being some limits on what people can say. I don't think it should be like, I'm accused of disinformation because I don't think, we should have vaccine passports and give them to, give vaccines for a disease that doesn't pretty much ever kill kids, and force them to have a vaccine to go to school and be able to travel. No, that's not disinformation. That's frankly being a good parent and a campaigner for the right thing. But I do think there's the level of abuse. I mean, I think there've been more debates in Parliament about a Labour MP got some abuse on social media than there has been about, say, grooming gangs or about asylum seekers raping young women and young girls in this country. I mean, I think they need to get their priorities right. I mean, lots of these MPs should have a look at my social media feed for half an hour. And I've got to be honest with you, it's absolutely water off a duck's back to me. I think people should just, relax about it a bit. But it would be nice if it could be changed. But I don't know how you do that without stopping people being able to talk about the things they care about.
Yeah, and I actually think that some of the answers there could lie in what Elon Musk was talking about when he first bought Twitter, but it's kind of gone by the wayside, which is saying that, of course, everyone wants an element of content moderation, but they should do it themselves. It should be very easy, very intuitive, very straightforward to say, I want to be on social media because I want to promote my work or I want to look at what I'm interested in. I don't want it to be an easy route for people to bombard me with horrific images if they so choose. But the point is that that's not a decision which is being made by some faceless bureaucrat either in government or in a tech company. It's something that you do yourself, something that's
well, you used to be able to, because you could basically say, this is the feed I want to follow, and then I'm sorry, these algorithms default and they send you stuff that you even if you've blocked people. But there we are. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Do you think there is this sort of nefarious secret, as Tom says, not so secret attempt actually to censor what's going on at X because governments aren't in control of it, particularly a left-wing government? I have a funny feeling Nigel Farage would have a load of problems with X if he was in government. I mean, I think governments don't like being criticised. Well, but that's our job in the media. And it's also we hold you to account, and that's also what people do on social media. And again, as Kelly J. King was saying, I don't think we'd be knowing much about what was going on in Iran if it wasn't for social media. Certainly the last 2 weeks, literally barely touched by the BBC, despite having the entire department. Now, we weren't discussing it very much on this show at all either, very much in passing, because it was sort of not really, haven't got much information, don't really know what's going on, and there were so many other big pressing stories. We have Maduro and all of that, and there's only 3 hours, I'm on air every day. But the BBC hasn't got that excuse because they've got a whole massive website. They've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of different parts of the BBC output. Didn't really touch it, and it was only when it was all over X that actually and the pressure was people were saying, why isn't the BBC discussing these protests? I mean, 5 people gather out, pro-Hamas people gather outside anywhere. They get a 4-hour coverage in every BBC show. And 6 items on the BBC website, but not hundreds of thousands, millions of Iranians.
No, I think that's exactly right. And the excuses that have been made by the BBC in particular for why there has been this lopsided coverage, this lack of coverage, I mean, it's getting absurd. I mean, it started off with where it's very difficult to deny and impossible to verify the information, and also to have anyone on the ground in Iran. That never stopped them with Gaza, where, of course, BBC trained journalists cannot get in. They were just quite happy to subcontract that to various quite openly pro-Hamas or certainly anti-Semitic people on the ground. I think it's because they struggle. The kind of metropolitan bourgeois liberal left, whatever you want to call them, people who tend to work at the BBC, struggle to compute the Iran issue. It grates up against a few things that they hold kind of implicit in their heads. The idea that anything that's kind of in opposition to the West probably haven't got it all wrong. The idea that they're very nervous about criticising anything with Islamic in the title, to be perfectly frank. So therefore the Islamic Republic of Iran mixes in with that. And also because of the fact that I think it's a story that they struggle to digest. It's not necessarily that it's kind of clear-cut agenda to silence
Islam good. Young women saying, I want to be free.
Where
and not
on the hierarchy does this fit? I'm not sure. Let's just park it. I think that's kind of what happened.
That's absolutely, well, that's hence the Greta Thunbergs and the Gary Linekers and all the Hollywood stars, I mean, it was amazing, actually, Golden Globes. There were no statements about Iran. But interestingly, there have been no statements about Gaza or anything. I don't, there's a rule at the Golden Globes. I don't know. I don't watch watch these things unless Ricky Gervais is hosting them, let's be honest, even then I only watches highlights. And no one does watch these things, interestingly. But then we see afterwards all these pictures, they've all got this little badge, which has basically got a bloody handprint. And that bloody handprint, like, is basically in solidarity with the people of Gaza. No, that's not in solidarity with the people of Gaza. You'll know well what that bloody handprint is. It's basically a lynching of Jews, and these men literally tearing. They tore their bodies apart. They tore out their organs, held like their livers and stuff out the window with their red bloody hands. And when people have that red hand, you are basically celebrating the lynching of Jews.
It's incredible.
I mean, I think they were Israeli soldiers, but they were they're conscripted soldiers. You know, I'm just saying. These people need a shake of the head. I really need to wobble their heads. Do you think that Donald Trump should do something? He's announced 25% tariffs on countries doing business with Iran. He said very clearly, you know, a week or so ago, that America would act. They would not stand by. And warning the Ayatollah, you know, if they start, you know, shooting people. And then we had the Mike Huckabee, who's the US ambassador to Israel, and he was in an interview yesterday talking about how, well, you know, they're keeping options open, but, you know, if there were sort of, you know, mass killings, well, by all accounts from the people, you know, the word that's, as much as it's coming out with that internet ban and telephone and all communication ban in Iran, we're looking at probably in the many thousands now. Well, certainly, you know, thousands of people being executed. Lots of them young people just wanting the most basic human rights. How many should die before Donald Trump acts? Because a lot of them will have come out having been told, don't worry, America's going to step in. I'm not quite sure what America can do. Do you think they should do something?
Well, this is the difficulty, isn't it? And we've seen it repeated many times over recent decades when you have a popular uprising of one kind or another, and there is this appeal which will go out to the West, but America really in particular, to kind of row in behind them, to back them up. In other parts of the world, that hasn't always worked out particularly well, and I think that's part of the reticence, that's part of the non-interventionist strain within the Trump administration. At the same time, I think he's also quite keen to put Iran on notice, and so how much of this is just trying to send a message and how much of this is actually we're going to come in if necessary is not entirely obvious, not least because Trump is very erratic on these questions himself. I mean, there's a tendency
he might get bored with Iran,
and you know, even with, you know, Syria, I mean, he eventually kind of bombed an airbase there, but only after his daughter had shown him pictures of, you know, emaciated children. He's actually a lot more instinctual and reactive than sometimes a lot of the people who like to read a lot of ideology into him. So it's very difficult to say. It's also very difficult to say what would be effective. You really don't want to be in a situation where you're dropping bombs and intervening purely as a kind of PR gesture or to demonstrate that you're serious. So all bets are off.
But it is really interesting because in terms of the economic sort of strangulation of the country, and again, it's amazing. You know, the BBC again, absolutely obsessed. It's all about economics. No, that's the catalyst. You know, the spiralling inflation, the exchange rate. Basically, you know, you can't. If you're a shop, it's not even just about people going to the shop. Shopkeepers can't have any stock because you can't buy anything because you can't sell it at a price that you've paid for it. I mean, just money has become almost meaningless. Similar to Venezuela and Zimbabwe. And part of that is down to these sanctions, but largely it's down to having a completely corrupt, incompetent, theocratic regime. I'm sorry, that's the main reason you've got those shortages. But it has been exacerbated. I mean, if he does exacerbate it by basically trying to sort of cut off Iran even more, I mean, you know, that's the point when people are a bit hungry, they don't tend to revolt. But the evidence is very clear: when they're hungry enough, they will rise up, and that's what people are doing. But it's very, very clear that the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, they are very much, I mean, they are an army. They are on the streets. They've replaced the local, you know, police in basically in the clamping down on these protests, and they are being absolutely ruthless. And the same as with China, like Tiananmen Square. You know, the Chinese, they brought in army, you know, from elsewhere so that people weren't firing on their own sort of local people. But there's quite clear the IRGC have no qualms at all about this. There's a lot of talk. They're firing in the street indiscriminately. They're kettling people into alleyways and then tear gassing them and then firing on them. People are being arrested. They're now going in and executing people who've been arrested. No trial, no system of judicial investigation at all. And people are scared. And I would say you're going to have to be pretty bloody brave to go out on the streets of Iran now.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it's horrific, and it's happening under cover of digital darkness since the internet was cut off at the tail end of last week. You also wonder, though, in the longer term, how the kind of mark that protests like this make, because you have seen this kind of build up over recent years. Obviously, you know, way back in the tail end of the 2000s, you had the sort of green movement, then you had more recently, obviously, the women life freedom movement and protests in response to the murder in police custody of Mahsa Amini for not wearing a hijab properly. Now these protests they've been kind of building and building in number, in how broad across society, and also the severity, therefore, of the crackdown, which the mullahs judged to be necessary in order to keep a lid on this. I think this is, nevertheless, as horrific as the scenes that we'll see in the coming days, I'm sure, will be. I think it's also a sign of a regime whose day is done. I mean, how can they possibly continue to maintain order after having massacred so many people? How can they possibly command any kind of respect amongst the sections of society who did previously, you know, still broadly speaking, want the regime to continue after their full brutality has been shown? So it's one of those things where, in the longer term, I think this is a sign of a regime that is so vicious, precisely because it's kind of brittle and desperate. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. Again, it's 85 million people. This is a huge country, and although sort of quite poverty-stricken now, they have a huge military. And again, you have got that theocratic, that absolute, you know, zeal of the extremist religious, you know, Islamist viewpoint, which we also see apparently in our schools with a Jewish MP, a Labour MP in Bristol, Damien Egan, having a school visit to a school in his own constituency banned after a campaign by pro-Palestinian teachers. Parents saying they would draw their kids, well, move their kids out of school for the day. Well, fine, don't bring your kid in for the day, but we'll know you're a bigot because he's pro-Israel. These things keep happening. We had the protests outside the Israeli Israeli restaurant, in Notting Hill in London a couple of days ago. We just got non-stop attacks on Jewish businesses, on individual Jewish people. We've got protests in the streets. There's no sign of it going away anywhere. What is being done? Because a little bit of, we should do something about this, and isn't this terrible from the government? It doesn't seem to me to be enough. We need the people who make these threats to be. I'm sorry. I mean, a lot of these people. I'm wondering. Got dual nationality? I want you out of the country. Sorry, I've got none. A lot of these people who are British. I'm sorry. If you're British and you're making threats like that, you really should be arrested. If you're saying you won't keep the peace, if you're threatening physical violence and physical damage to the school or to a human being because someone has views that you don't like and they're going to come and visit school, you need to have your collar felt by the police. And yet, as we've seen with the Maccabi Tel Aviv case in Birmingham, the police are actually not just turning a blind eye, they are helping the Islamist extremists. We have a serious problem in our schools, we have a serious problems in our government, serious problems in our civil service, in our health service, in our schools. We've got an issue and we need to face up to it, and we need to not just face up to it, we need to get it out.
No, I completely agree. And the problem here is that it's not just cowardice, it's not just the police or any other institution who are bending over backwards to indulge anti-Semitism dressed up as anti-Zionism, or, you know, basically Islamic sectarianism posing as something which is just about the children of Gaza. The problem is that these people have been sort of welcomed in. I don't just mean into the country, I mean in terms of our institutions. The Maccabi Tel Aviv scandal, it was eye-opening because of the fact that it wasn't just that you had the police chiefs there who were afraid of what Muslim youths might do on the night of that football match. It's because they were being advised by these supposed community leaders who were saying that under no circumstances should this suspicious Israeli Jewish team and their supporters be allowed anywhere near Aston.
Don't want Jews in Birmingham.
We've now got Islamic sectarian MPs in that part of the world. This is how deep the rot runs now. The whole multicultural state is the problem. It treats these people as representatives of their quote-unquote community who need to be.
Well, the thing is, you know what? People voted for them.
Yeah. No, I suppose in terms of, and this is the problem about most cultures, it encourages sectarianism. And now we're seeing it bear its poison fruit, and everyone's acting surprised by it. There's also an element to this, though, which is just purely a case of, are we really going to have a situation where public order in this country is dictated by certain groups who are willing to kick off and the police being scared to clamp down on them for fear of being called racist or Islamophobic?
So basically, whoever's the most threatening
how it
wins.
Works now?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes, that is how it works
yet how
now.
telling-
Yes.
And yet how telling that the police or all of our institutions are terrified of being called is racist or Islamophobic, but the anti-Semitism allegations seem to bounce off of them.
It's just true. I'd love to hear your thoughts on